I was a single mom, stuck in a snowstorm, stranded on the highway at midnight. And because one cop didn't feel like doing his job, I was labeled a criminal. But a week later, he was standing in my living room, red-faced, humiliated, all because of one phone call. If you've ever felt powerless against authority, if you've ever been treated like you didn't matter, if you've ever fantasized about the perfect, harmless revenge, hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up, because this one is deliciously satisfying. The night everything went wrong many years ago, I was working the 3/11 shift at a hospital. Back then, that schedule meant your body never fully adjusted. You were always tired, always slightly out of sync with the world. And on this particular night, nature decided to pile on. A brutal snowstorm was rolling in. The kind that turns roads into skating rinks and headlights into glowing blurs. Ice. Wind. That sharp, bone-cutting cold that seeps through gloves. Near the end of my shift, I was down in the ER and casually asked a few law enforcement officers if the roads were bad. They didn't hesitate. Yeah. One said, "They're getting nasty. Take the highway. It's the only road being plowed." That advice would change everything. The crash. About 30 minutes later, I eased my truck onto the highway ramp. I was being careful. Slow white-knuckled. I made it maybe 50 feet. Then, the steering wheel jerked. My stomach dropped. Metal screamed. Bam! I slammed straight into the guardrail. When everything stopped shaking, I realized something horrifying. I was facing north, in the southbound emergency lane, pinned against the rail. I tried the ignition. Nothing. Again, nothing. The engine was dead. Snow swirled past my headlights. My breath fogged the air. The temperature was hovering around 20 degrees and dropping. I sat there, shaking, telling myself, okay. An officer will come by. Someone will help. Cars passed. 1, 2. No one stopped. Eventually, fear took over. I knew what would happen if I stayed. I'd freeze. So I did the only thing I could. I got out of my truck and climbed down a 3-story embankment. Slipping, sliding, heart pounding, until I reached the city street below. I started walking back toward the hospital. Halfway there, one of our security guards spotted me and pulled over. "What the hell happened to you?" By the time I was back inside, my fingers were numb, my legs were shaking, and adrenaline was the only thing keeping me upright. I immediately called the non-emergency number to report the accident. This was before cell phones. You couldn't just snap pictures or leave voicemails. Everything depended on paperwork and people doing their jobs. I explained everything. The woman on the line said, "You should have stayed with your Viethaphone. It's 20 friggin' degrees. It wouldn't start. I would have frozen." A pause. "Okay. We'll call you when we dispatch an officer." They never did. I got a friend to take me home. I waited. No call. The next day, I asked a friend who ran a wrecker service to go retrieve my truck. When he got there, it was gone. Panic set in. I called non-emergency again. That's when the woman casually said the words that made my stomach drop through the floor. "A trooper had it towed as a hit and run. There's a warrant for leaving the scene of an accident." A warrant for me. I felt sick. I asked if she could see my call reporting the crash. "Yes," she said, "but we had over 220 accidents that night. It got lost in the shuffle. Like my life, my job, my freedom, powerless against the system to get my truck released. I was told I had to contact the trooper and complete an accident report." She gave me his name and number. I called. He was off duty. Left messages. Nothing. I kept calling. By day 3, desperation kicked in. I asked for his supervisor. That's when I was told he's on vacation. Only he can take the report. Even the supervisor couldn't, which was absolute BS, but I was trapped. I was a single mom. I worked evenings. I had one vehicle, luckily. My uncle loaned me a car. But the stress, the humiliation, the anger, it sat in my chest like a burning coal. A week later, I finally got a call. Master Trooper Jerk himself. He said he'd come to my house to do the report. When he arrived, I could tell immediately he wasn't expecting what he saw. My house was spotless. Clean, calm, not the chaotic. She must be irresponsible image he'd clearly built in his head. We sat at the kitchen table. He asked why I didn't stay with the truck. I calmly explained. He checked the system again. Then, almost casually, he said, "Ah, I see your call now. My supervisor could have handled this." There it was. Confirmation. My life derailed because he didn't feel like doing paperwork. He stood to leave, and that's when I noticed it. His hat. On my chair. I stared at it. A slow smile crept across my face. I picked up the phone, called non-emergency, and in my softest, breathiest Marilyn Monroe voice, I said, "Master Trooper Jerk was just here taking a report, and, he left part of his uniform here?" Silence. Then, "Excuse me." His hat. I hung up. 20 minutes later, there was a knock. When I opened the door, he was 10 shades of red, didn't meet my eyes, barely spoke. Grabbed the hat. Left. I stood there, victorious. Justice, served ice cold. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud, or cruel, or illegal. Sometimes it's just letting karma borrow your phone. If this story made you smile, hit that like button. Tell us in the comments, what's the pettiest revenge you've ever seen? And don't forget to subscribe, because we've got plenty more stories where this came from.